I saved a little bit of time to talk about this movie. The reason is because this movie was very weird, disturbing, and also quite confusing. So I kind of left a little bit of moments to kind of get my thoughts together, actually talking about this film. And the movie I'm actually talking about is Blink Twice. So this is a movie that's directed by Zoe Kravitz, and it's pretty much like the typical type of movie where you have a rich billionaire tycoon, and it's kind of more or less reminiscent of the whole idea of luring people into an island, like something you would see like Jeffrey Epstein or those sort of individuals. So I think Blink Twice definitely seemed interesting to see how this movie turned out. But watching it, it was a very weird, thought-provoking, disturbing film. And even still, after watching it, I'm still more or less confused by the whole movie. And you could tell from the reviews of this movie, it's pretty mixed. So there are mixed reviews on Google. I think in the general grand scheme of things on Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic, it's been a very largely positive film in their cases. But there are like some reviews and some critics as well that have viewed this movie in a very different sort of side that is not firmly positive. So there are some pretty much mixed and negative reviews, not just with the critics but also with the audience. So I wanted to give my impressions and my take on this movie. So it may not come with any surprise, but the way I actually thought about this movie, I thought it was a decent movie. It's not amazing or great on its own merits, but I also don't think it's terrible or bad. Now, I'm going to kind of give you like my thoughts of it. I haven't come back from the cinema and watched it, which I usually do when it comes to these sort of discussions. But I'm giving you my thoughts like after a few days of watching it. So when you start to watch this movie, there is a disclaimer warning before watching it. I think it's because like sometimes the themes of this movie gets pretty sensitive in terms of where the discussion and the talking points of this film is. Like I said, this movie is kind of like a manipulation, hallucinating tactics that potentially, you know, people who are very powerful can lure people in. And this movie sets this theme out. So one of the things that this movie sets out with is a character called Frida. And she is a cocktail waitress. And she is basically a cocktail waitress in a big, expensive event. And that big, expensive event has a character called Slater. And Slater is played by Channing Tatum. And essentially, he's like this sort of billionaire tech tycoon mogul. And he stepped down as a CEO because of his past behavior. But Frida doesn't know that. And certainly her friends don't know about it either. So whilst Frida encounters with Slater, they exchange conversations and dialogue, and then they get the friends along, and Slater invites them to his island. And the island is kind of met with like a big, you know, summer house, garden, you know, people who are maids in the island that provide food, cocktails, and everything. So it seems that this is kind of more or less what a lot of these people who are like involved in trafficking and all those sort of behaviors are kind of luring these people into. And the first half of this movie is pretty slow and not exactly great. It doesn't really build the scene very well when you watch the first half of the movie, certainly from the beginning to the middle part. So most of it is pretty unwatchable, it's pretty long-winded, and it doesn't really develop anything thought-provoking. So I felt like literally at the beginning I was pretty much scammed when it came to this movie, because they gave all these warnings, but yet nothing seemed to develop from this movie at all at the beginning. But certainly when the movie gets to the middle to the end, I really think that's when the movie really shines. So in the middle part, Frida kind of explores the island and everything, and she basically has one of these drinks that essentially is like snake venom, which the snake venom essentially allows her to see unforeseen events that happened. So some unforeseen events that happened during the island that Frida is in is that some of her friends have disappeared or just aren't in the island anymore. And she gets very concerned about it. She's also told a lot of her other friends. One of her other friends that's also like another second character that comes into it as well throughout the movie is Sarah. And they just exchange a lot of conversations and their concerns pretty much throughout the film. And essentially a lot of the people and certainly the girls on the island, they just enjoy a lot of the meals and the drinks, and also the drugs as well. So a lot of the hallucinogenic drugs as well. So it kind of, kind of doesn't really let them foresee what the reality of the situation is on the island. But Frida kind of gets away from that, taking the snake venom. It kind of sees what actually goes on in the island. And then she kind of spreads the message out, essentially. And then things get really crazy. So then Slater becomes very manipulative and evil. And there's just lots of things that just hell breaks loose. So it does really build up the intensity a little bit more towards the end. And it does actually get quite disturbing. And I will say, I think the actors actually did a good job. I really think Channing Tatum did actually enjoy his role as Slater. You can really tell, like, at the end, especially, he's like this very manipulative, evil CEO, like corrupt person with a very flawed personality. And I think that's really excelled in his performance. And I think certainly the actresses that played Frida and Sarah did also a good job with the movie as well. So I could really praise a lot of the acting performances, mostly during the middle to the end, but certainly the beginning to the middle, it's pretty unwatchable and pretty boring. So that's kind of where a lot of my questions and criticisms of this movie lies at the beginning, but certainly in the middle and the end is where things really excel. Now, I will also label another criticism I have with this movie, and it's also the ending of the movie. Now, I don't want to talk about it because it is going to spoil the movie, but I do think the way the movie ended and concluded is a little bit questionable. So I do kind of question how the movie ended and just what really the conclusion was from essentially everything that happened. But that's kind of just another element of criticism I have with this movie. But I think as a disturbing movie and building up tension, I think the movie does very well at doing that. I just wish there was just more attention when it comes to more the beginning of the movie and actually kind of building up the whole synopsis and really the characters a little bit more. But overall, it's a decent film. It's definitely watchable. So really, if I had to rate Blink Twice, I probably would give the movie a 6 out of 10. I think as a thrilling mystery film, it does some things well, especially the middle of the end. I think the beginning does come in very, very slow. I wish there was also a little bit more understanding with the whole mystery and tell of the island to know really about how Frida questions the place a little bit more and how that would have developed and made sense, especially towards the end, because I really do think the ending got a little bit messy. But in general, I do think this is a decent film. And yeah, let me know what you think of Blink Twice. Please like, comment, subscribe, dislike if you want to dislike. And yeah, that's about it. See you later.